Braden Burns, and I have no fucking clue how to start this podcast.
I'm Jared Keene.
I'm Amani Higode.
I'm Len Scuthmiller.
Today, we're talking about the Disney machine.
Now, for those of you that don't know what the Disney machine is, Disney is a multi-billion-dollar entertainment industry that's currently, a big asset to the American economy. And I personally feel like that is not a problem at all. It is something that should be celebrated.
And I'm here in agreement with Amani. I think that the entertainment industry is positively affected by having big industries that are able to get big names and actors and actresses. And of course, we'll talk about the implications and within economic markets and how that creates difficulties for other industries to start movies and things like that. But still in agreement with Disney itself.
Personally, I can't really take too much of a stance on it. I agree that it is bringing, it is a good part of our economy. It's an important part of our economy, but I don't necessarily feel like it needs to be dominated by just a couple of these giant umbrella companies.
Yeah, I feel the same way with Braden. It's good to have some large companies that are able to do, good movies, but over time, the monopolies, they're able to control the cultural and social aspects of what they produce. I mean, if you get one large company, that's able to control basically the entire media of a nation.
Yeah, I mean, Disney owns ABC, if I'm right.
Yes. Yeah.
Disney bought ABC, so, and I'm not saying that they do this, but if they truly wanted to, they could try to send misinformation about something if they wanted to. And I think that's a little bit dangerous when you have a company that's in charge of factual information for people. So you wouldn't think of Disney as somebody who you would go to get information about the election from.
And that's actually they were actually hired by the U.S. government as to create propaganda in World War II. They literally made propaganda films. So, I mean, this has happened before.
Well, I say that, the American people feel like they want to spend their money on Disney products. Disney continues to show that they can produce quality content that Americans feel like they can purchase, they will purchase. And they start expanding their reach, and nobody has a problem with it. And I don't see a problem arising from this. I feel like people are jumping the gun too much and saying that Disney is going to do something bad instead of looking at the fact that they have nothing to gain from hurting people, from taking the truth out of the news, because people are going to stop watching the news, as the fake news kind of movement has shown.
So I think that's a good point. And I want to also get back to Lance's point when he talked about propaganda films, because I think that's important when you talk about industries that collude with governments. And I don't know if we could call it collusion, because I know a lot of people knew about propaganda that they were putting out, and it was pretty obvious propaganda. I mean, now that when you see propaganda, you know it's propaganda. I mean, it's that kind of propaganda. But also something that you just said there, I think, especially with the recent election of the Trump administration, I think the idea of fake news it'd be safe to say it is greatly increased in population. I don't think people talked much. People knew there were biases in news, but they didn't talk often about how fake news was. And I don't think that decreased the viewership of CNN or Fox News. I wouldn't be comfortable saying it increased the viewership. I don't know the numbers of viewership on CNN and Fox News. But I think that the interest in it did not, by any ways, diminish how many people wanted to watch. I didn't watch CNN before the other news sources said it was fake news, and I started watching it since. And I make my own opinions on what they have to say, and if there's things I disagree with or things I think they marketed incorrectly, and I'd even be comfortable to say it's the majority of things that they say I think have biases behind them. It's the same with Fox News. I think the majority of what they say has biases behind them, but I don't think that makes it wrong for them, to share those sources. If there are people that are fully tricked by biases and people that fall into the category of viewers that make their own decision on one single source, I don't think that's the responsibility of the source. I think that's the responsibility of another source or, the people as a whole to come to what I think the greatest source of interest is, and that's the truth. And not to fully move the conversation from Disney, which is what we wanted to talk about, to the media and how they represent news. But if Disney has this big of a stake in news, and I think owning ABC is a big stake in news, owning ESPN is a big stake in sports news, which might have just as big of a platform when talking about government issues, then I think it's important to bring up at some point at least.
For sure.
So something I wanted to kind of move in a quick direction. Something I wanted to start off early that's something that might be more interesting to people that are interested in learning about Disney and not necessarily learning about Disney's tree of assets, something that maybe is more relatable in just things that Disney does. Disney releases movies very, very often. And something that Braden and I discussed before the show, Disney has a stake in production companies that might not even be Disney movies. So Disney might be involved in more movies than have the Disney logo on it.
That's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
And I think I think you can make your own opinion on what you think the legality of that is. But if the production companies are doing their work and they happen to be making money that goes straight to Disney, I think we're following laws.
I don't think that it's illegal. I just think that it could be dangerous. Not that it is right now, but that it could be. So, like, Disney owns Touchstone, which was like a distribution label for movies for the longest time, since 1984. You saw their logo at the front of like every movie that you watched on VHS.
Most VHS movies.
Yeah. I don't think that it's necessarily a bad thing that they own Touchstone. Like it's within their rights to purchase other companies. I just think that it's a little bit scary when you have one entity that is kind of has their feelers on everything in an entire industry.
I have to disagree because I think this comes back to that old American notion of competition. You have an industry right now that owns their own production team, their own animation team. They own the child actors. Disney Channel pumps out some of the greatest actors eventually. For the most part.
Some of the worst actors.
Yeah,
Some of the worst
really?
actors as well. I will throw that in. But they do produce some quality young stars. I mean, Selena Gomez, she's dropping hits. Ariana Grande, she's dropping hits. The Jonas Brothers, when they were relevant, they dropped hits.
I guess so.
Okay.
I just feel like if you have a company as well put together as Disney does, when it comes to film, when it comes to entertainment, it's just going to breed better quality entertainment. People are going to have to rise up and say, if I want to take on Disney, I got to make sure that what I produce is at the top of its level. Because I have to beat out now the Marvel movies, the gold level animation films, and Star Wars too. So if you want to beat Disney, you have to make sure that what you're producing is top tier, and all we want is top tier content. All we want is the best out of Americans. All we want.
But what happens when Disney swallows all of the smaller companies, and then there are just those select few that don't have nearly as much like capital behind them to make those movies? So, like, at some point, it becomes nearly impossible for a small company to make like a AAA title movie.
How many Grammys or Oscars? My bad. How many Oscars have Disney movies won?
I have no idea.
Not very many. So for a team that is built up and is currently owns a lot of the market, they're apparently not producing movies that are
also
considered critically.
Okay, well, but the thing is, the people who are consuming most of these Disney movies aren't critics. They're children who, like, as everybody knows, are like super good consumers, because when they want something, they'll beg their parents until they get it.
Well, yeah, that's what Disney's known for. I mean, it's family entertainment.
Yeah, exactly.
That's their core demographic.
So when people, okay, we'll take The Revenant. Revenant was a great movie, in my opinion.
Still haven't seen it.
Really? Okay, that's a whole other issue. It was a great movie. Like, it was beautifully shot. There was a good soundtrack. CGI was on
Better-
top of it.
Better than the Bye Bye Man.
Yeah, better than the Bye Bye Man.
I'm sorry if there's any people that like the Bye Bye Man that are listening.
Actually, no, if you like
Actually,
that
if you like that movie, then you can go ahead and leave.
Anyways, where was I going with this?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
But
Okay. Revenant. Great movie. But that movie was being advertised to people who love film, people who are like really not necessarily snobby about films, but people who enjoy like really high quality made films, and that includes critics because those are the people who want to do that for a career. So of course, Disney not trying to make movies for critics isn't going to get much critical acclaim because they're not trying to trick critics into buying all of their merchandise and watch all of their movies. They're trying to get families and children to.
Right. So I mean, a question that I would ask for you is this: what market do you think the Marvel movies are pushed towards?
they're definitely pushed towards children.
Well,
I
okay,
think actually all
we
age
think-
ranges.
I don't know anymore.
See, I don't think
Maybe early
families.
on.
I don't think families. I think it's a very free push. I think people that like comedic movies, people that like action movies, people that like I mean, it doesn't fall. Most of their movies don't fall under this, but sometimes there's some dark themes. People that maybe like horror movies. I don't think that.
They've
I
yet
don't
to
think
do
there's enough
something
evidence.
enough scary enough to be a horror movie, but I see what you're saying.
But I mean, things that have a little bit of shock to them. People that like love stories. People that like there's lots of relationships that are formed in the movies. People that like friend movies. People that like lots of things. And I think they keep it appropriate enough to push the kids that want to be like the people in Marvel movies. People that want to be an Avenger. And they push to young adults, to people that want to enjoy the stories and a lot of the action and a lot of the comedy, and push to adults that want to watch shows with their kids. So maybe you are right. Maybe there is some family push. As opposed to, I mean, what market do you think Interstellar was pushed towards?
Oh, definitely the sci-fi loving, the film critique, because it's a Christopher Nolan movie.
I mean, it's a Christopher Nolan. People that like soundtracks. I mean, it's the same with
Exactly.
Dunkirk. I think Dunkirk and Interstellar might have a very, and Inception's the same way. I think a lot of Christopher Nolan movies are the same way. And what I would ask to someone who thinks Disney has the problem with Disney is that they push things to too many people and that they're consumed by too many people is was the market that Inception pushed their movie to too small, or do you think Inception pushed the market or pushed their movie to the market that they wanted to push their movie to? Do you think that they didn't want everyone to watch the movie and that they because what I want to argue is that if we think that giving Disney all of the power would mean that we would lose the movies that critics want to watch, I think we're wrong, because I think the movies critics want to watch are based on what the companies that make movies for critics are based around. And then something else I wanted to touch upon is you talked about Disney swallowing up smaller companies. And I want us to have very clear dialogue about swallowing up other companies and what that means. Because the swallow up of Touchstone did not involve Disney going into the headquarters of Touchstone and saying, we now own Touchstone. I mean, it was a deal between investors of Touchstone, between the CEO and market of Touchstone, between the board of Touchstone. I think it was a corporation at the time. And I wouldn't know. And it's the same with ABC. And it was the same when ABC acquired ESPN, or if they created it from the ground. I don't know, how ABC had their start. I mean, it's a deal that investors make. And also the purchase often comes in value of Disney. So Disney will give a share of their own stock to a new company that they start, and usually it's a healthy purchase, so they keep on employees, things like that. And I want to be sure, because different acquisitions cause different things. I mean, some acquisitions are just to put other things out of business, and I don't know if that's what Disney is in the game for, or if their goal is to create a bigger outreach that they could push to families that they want to push their movies to. And that's why I think it's fair, because I think a lot of people, I think the market for Disney movies is much bigger than the market for movies by private industries, by things like that. I mean, something like Split. I mean, Split was not a Disney movie, if I'm correct. I don't know where Split came from. But a movie...
It's an M. Night Shyamalan movie.
I mean, it's an M. Night Shyamalan movie, and a lot of those movies are similar, and that could be a Disney movie. And
actually, I know that Split and Unbreakable. Those are like they're in a connected universe. They got Marvelitis.
Okay.
Yeah, like everybody wants to be Marvel nowadays. Everybody wants a connected universe between their movies. But if I remember right, Disney did have a hand in making Unbreakable. So that doesn't mean that they helped make Split either. But
I want to actually cut back to something Jared said earlier, because I think I want to change my stance now. I don't only think that Disney machine is not bad. I think it's good. I think it's actually the next step in the evolution of the Hollywood process. Because, Hollywood's dead, bro. We just gotta admit it now. They have been churning out trash movies. Chips? The movie Chips about the highway cops? That was a remake of a TV show that wasn't good.
That is true.
You want to know something? It has a nobody likes Rotten Tomatoes. They give it a 17%. IMDb gave it a 6 out of 10. You want to know why? Because IMDb is just too nice to movies nowadays. They don't want to admit that some director who put his whole life's work into this to try and break into Hollywood just produced a trash movie, but this was a trash movie. So, I'm thinking that with the Disney machine, as Jared said, they're broad with their reach, They have action, they have comedy, they have romance, they have a little horror, maybe a little sci-fi here and there.
Maybe.
They're forcing all of these genres to stop just sticking to their tropes, to stop just sticking to what has been done before, but to expand. They got to do something new. They got to take the sci-fi genre to a new direction. Westworld took it in a new direction. They got to take the medieval genre, the action adventure drama into a new direction. Game of Thrones, you kill people. You make the audience go like, whoa, I didn't see that coming. That's the effect of good movies. That's the effect of people coming together and realizing we need to start this process a little further back. We don't just have to get our actors from some corporation, get our producers from another one, get our cameramen from here. We're going to get our own. We're going to make sure they know what they're doing. They're part of the process the whole way so we can produce something complete. And I think that's how we push movie evolution.
So, okay. A comment I would have on that, though, and this is one of the issues that I do have with Disney, is I don't think they hold every movie to the same standard. And that's a big issue I would have with any corporation.
I agree.
Because I think that a corporation's goal is to hold every single thing they make to the highest standard. And I don't think that's evident in Disney. And a reason I don't think that's evident is Disney's is they push out movies. And I don't want to say that every actor that plays a role in the Marvel movies is a great actor or actress. I think a lot of them play great characters in the movies. And I think all of the characters have had great development. And I will specifically say I think that the most talented actors in the group come from the movies that have gotten the most movies out of them. And that could be different. Actually, I would want to do more research into how people reacted to the movies that were, solo movies, because I think the actors have different talents, but I think the characters they create is really what matters within Disney. But if we look at other movies that Disney puts out, I don't know if it's an issue in how they produced it, if it's an issue in how they got people to act in it, if it's an issue on how they got people to direct it, or things like that. I don't think that each movie that they come out with is at the same standard as other movies come out with. And that's something that I have an issue with when we talk about competition, because if Disney pushes out a movie and they're the ones we want to compete with, and the movie isn't that great, it doesn't spark a lot of Christopher Nolan-like directors to make great movies. It makes people like Christopher Nolan-like directors. Christopher Nolan will only make movies that he puts all of his dedication into, and that's one of the reasons
He's like Quentin Tarantino.
I mean, it's kind of like, it's directors like that I think, Kubrick, I think, is like that. Someone who, Spielberg, I think these are directors that are like, I'm going to make this because I want to make this. I don't care about, how many people are going to watch it or how much money I'm going to make off of it. But people that are, maybe people that are talented like those directors, but don't care maybe as much as what they put into it, and it's more about how much they get out of it. Time is what matters to them. So they're going to do things quickly. And if they only have to compete with a movie like Chips, which, just looking at the cover, I can tell is a terrible movie. Like in the horror industry, and this is one of the biggest issues about the horror industry, and I don't want to go too far off of this, the horror industry has had a terrible rep of having people that act very poorly, scenes that are very cringy, things that fall under the exact same stereotypes forever. And things like that within the movies make the competition not care as much about what they do. And suddenly, you get very few movies that follow new guidelines that are interesting.
Can I interject right there?
Yeah.
And let me tell you, like, it's very interesting how horror movies have been brought up as being a weak genre, and that's being the one genre that Disney hasn't touched.
Yeah.
You see, we haven't have to complain about action movies, because action movies have been stellar. We don't have to complain about comedies. They've been stellar lately. We don't have to complain about romance movies. They've been upping their game, too. But horror movies, conveniently, are the one area that Disney doesn't touch, and the one area that is constantly getting harped on for being terrible for the longest time.
So are you saying that if they entered the realm and they made movies that were of a higher standard than the movies that they do now, if it was of importance to them to make them good movies, it would increase the competition of other filmmaking industries to make good movies?
Exactly. I'm saying people would no longer be able to just cash in on a horror movie and say, hey, no one's seen a horror movie in a while. Let's bring out another Freddy movie.
Let's bring out...
It'll have worse actors, worse CGI blood, and no plot this time instead of a little bit of a plot.
But okay, here's the thing with horror movies and other movies that follow... I mean, stuff that's kind of further from Disney's normal... I mean, just their norm in the first place. Are they ever going to produce those movies? I mean...
See, and that's
again, it goes back to Disney being a family-friendly... Their core really is, this is a movie that the whole family can watch from age 4 to, the adults in the family. So are they actually going to do, like, quality horror movies or quality action films that involve a lot of
I am glad you brought that up.
And stuff like that?
I'm glad, because that brings me to my next point. That is why the Disney machine is okay, so that they can buy up corporations, not put the Disney stamp on it, just buy Marvel, for example, make the Marvel movies so everyone can see this is how you make a superhero movie. Everyone notice how since Marvel's been making quality superhero movies, superhero movie levels have risen? Like Fox put out Logan. Have you seen that film? That is beautiful. That is a beautiful film, not by Disney.
Oh, yeah.
They pushed the competition up and it produced a great film. A great film.
Well, okay, but for some reason DC hasn't followed because...
Okay, fair. You go to a good point. They have bombed it. They tried to chase Disney instead of chasing a different direction, a different avenue. They just tried to make money instead of making quality. So that's a really good point.
So back to your thing about it being a good thing and it making just like a more healthy environment for better quality movies. And I do agree that is a possibility. But like Lance said, Disney's never gonna want to make a gritty movie. And I guess you did kind of cover it with it using for lack of a better word, like a sister company.
Yeah.
Or I guess it would be a daughter or a son company, whatever.
Child.
That's what I'm looking for.
It's a child company twice removed.
Let's actually get into the specifics of the genealogy. Cousin, I like that. Okay, child. Okay.
Anyway,
go ahead. You can finish your point because I already have a comment.
Okay.
and it's not on the genealogy. I promise.
Okay.
So, Disney, like Lance said, it's a family-friendly thing. They don't really want to be associated with movies that are really bloody like a Quentin Tarantino movie, even though Quentin Tarantino makes good movies. Mm-hmm. So, it really depends on if Disney is willing to step out of its comfort zone, it kind of leaving the family-friendly area and be willing to kind of usher themselves into a more gritty
I'll let Jared
subject.
go ahead because I have something to say.
So, the point I want to make is a little bit broader. And it's kind of a question to Braden and Lance because I think we could, not as though we wanted to start the conversation only to argue and find out what points we wanted to make, but just as a question to continue what you guys think about Disney. So let's say that Disney decided to acquire people to work for them that made horror films. So a production company that wanted to put their name on horror films, actors and actresses that wanted to act in horror films. And let's say that they did a good job. And let's say that they destroyed the market in horror films and people didn't want to compete and they did the only horror films.
Okay.
Do you think having the control over quality horror films that people wanted to see is a bad thing in the entertainment industry? And I mean that like straight up. Do you think it's better we'll say that other companies attempt to, compete and try to, come up with quality films that can, have a chance against Disney movies. We'll say that there are companies that try and they don't. and let's say that the only ones people want to see are Disney made, and we'll say that the Disney name isn't even attached because we won't talk about if they want to change their entire stance on movies from family oriented to all orientations. Do you think it's a bad thing that they would be the only ones being made that were AAA rated that people wanted to go see?
Yes, because, I mean, in the short term, that would work out really well. I have no doubt that they would make some really quality horror films, and, I mean, anything else that was really gritty. But in the long run, even though it is Disney, in the long run, I think that lack of competition would slowly degrade the quality over time. Maybe they could come up with new, innovative ways of reinvigorating that genre, but that lack of competition is going to make it a little difficult to do.
But what I'm saying is, there's no lack of competition. Let's say there is competition because I think because we have a mostly free, and something I wanted to talk about, and we can get into this later, is talking about things that come with copyrights, trademarks, things that people can register and stuff like that. And that's something I want to talk about later. But let's say that the competition is lively. Because I think people want to make, people will continue to make horror films all the time. They just make money, and you can use actors and actresses from England, and you can make them not have English accents, and critics will not like you because you're like, you know what, just play her as a British actress and she'll do better. Things like that. Another shout out to Bye Bye Man. But let's say the competition was lively, but Disney just continued to beat out the competition. And I know what you're saying. Let's say if there wasn't competition, I think it would absolutely be the case that the quality would degrade and people wouldn't care. Because as the quality degrades, and this is something that happens in the horror industry right now, even if you look at, and I hate to say this because I thought, when we watched it, I liked it a lot. I think it was a great film. I thought the idea was a little interesting. But when we watched the movie It Follows, I compared it to other horror films and I thought it was a very, very well done film. But if I compare that film to something like Shawshank Redemption, then suddenly I think that film has nothing. I think that the actors didn't compare. And I don't think that Shawshank Redemption hired grade A actors. I thought they hired, 2 or 3 lead roles that were done by very, very, very talented actors and actresses. Well, just actors in that movie. But I don't think that the difference in those and the abilities between those was what made the films different. And so I agree with you that if we said that the competition went away, people would just start watching the same films. And then they'd say, well, it's still good because it's, the same company. And the degradation of quality in the movies would seem like, non-existent to us because we just see, what's most recent. But I'm saying that let's say the competition stayed alive. And let's say that small companies made movies like It Follows that Netflix wanted to feature. Then in 5 years when that company would come out and make that film after there's degradation from Disney films, people would want to watch that film instead. And then I think the competition becomes alive again. So that's why I put a prerequisite on the idea of Disney taking over the horror film industry by requiring other companies to keep the competition alive. Because if the competition went away, like you said, there would be a lot of degrading in quality. But the ultimate point that I wanted to make was, if Disney continues to make movies that are better than the competition that people want to watch, that benefits 2 entities, Disney and all of the people that want to watch the movies. Because all of the people that want to watch the movies are watching movies that they want to watch. And so I don't think, and of course the movies that make those that are in less competition, if they lose money on the movies, I feel bad for them because I think making movies is a very difficult thing to do. But if we're helping out all of the industry that watches movies, which we'll say is 99.9% of the entertainment industry, it can be different amounts if you talk about how big Disney is, and we help Disney out because we make them a successful movie, I think that helps the betterment of entertainment more than saying, Disney, you can't touch horror because that's not your realm, and we'll keep these industries over here.
I say that helps 3 parties, not just 2. I think that also helps the makers of films, not just Disney, all of them, because now they see this is, if they're going for a popular audience and they get to see this is what the people want. If you can't show why your superior filming techniques are make better movies by making a better movie than Disney can by using superior techniques, and obviously your techniques are not superior. If you cannot relate that to the modern person, then obviously your techniques are null and void.
But
it's basically like, let's see if I can get a good analogy out of this. It's basically like being able, it's being the best guy at a specific computer that came out in 2002. Let's say I'm the best at I know all the ins and outs of the processor, the CPU, all the motherboard, everything. I know all about it. But their model's coming out. No one's going to buy that CPU and that computer anymore. No one's going to buy it. So no one's going to care that I'm the best at servicing it. They're going to care about this new thing that I have now.
And I wanted to make a comment because the analogy, I mean, you came up, it took you time to come up with that. I mean, that was pretty funny. But, the show's not meant for quality analogies, but that was like a analogy.
Like a D+.
I could compare that analogy to the Bye Bye Man if I had to do an equal comparison. No, but I think what you're saying is right. I think that if Disney continued to make movies that everyone wanted to see and it dominated the market, and then someone made a movie that people didn't think people wanted to see, but people decided, I wanted to see that. So, and I'll give you a good example of how that helped in a different market. When Apple started making computers, I mean, they were much more expensive than the computers that IBM, or the chips that IBM was creating and things like that. And also, Apple was one of the first in the games to start making, like, personal computers, even though you weren't allowed to call them PC. That was like, Microsoft's word for them. And they were far more expensive. Right now, Apple products are far more expensive. Why do people continue to buy Apple products? I mean, they're not necessarily always faster than the equal quality. I mean, there's just features of the product that Apple makes that people wanted to have, and people didn't know that people wanted to have that product. And that's why I think if Disney had, let's talk about the superhero industry. I mean, Disney continues to make movies that everyone thinks people want Disney to make, which are like, some comedy here, great action, characters that you've built up over 12 years now. I mean, great characters, played by great actors and actresses, and things like that are what people think they want. And then if a smaller company came out with a new superhero movie that was completely different, and this is maybe just as bad of an analogy as you did. Let's talk about like the show One Punch Man. I mean, I love that show, and not because the fight scenes in the first 14 to 15 episodes are good. I mean, he kills them in one hit. I mean, the fight scenes are pretty boring. I mean, you don't even see anything. You just see him kill things in one hit. But the thing I like about the show is that he wants competition, and he doesn't care about the fame. He never cared about the fame. He doesn't want money. I mean, he lives in this terrible place, and all he cares about are deals at supermarkets, things like that. Things you didn't think a superhero would care about. And I mean, it clearly wasn't made by Disney because it's a Japanese, animated show. But it's something that no one really would compare to a superhero movie, but I'd still put it in the same category. So even if Disney had a dominant market share in a certain thing, if we suddenly saw another company make something that is totally brand new that everyone completely loves, that would take a lot from Disney. And Disney might have to adapt and start doing things that maybe people will also start liking. And that's why I think it's okay if they dominate a sphere for any amount of time.
Okay, yeah, I see what you mean. Maybe having Disney as a big juggernaut to really control an industry for a while is a good idea. But, well, okay, I'd like to go into a little bit of the history with Disney, too. So, back in the day when Walt Disney was actually starting the company, he was writing these cartoons called the Oswald cartoons or something like that, yeah. And he was actually cheated out by his distributor. His distributor managed to get the wording in his in their agreement just right so that they owned everything that Disney was creating himself. And they eventually hired all his animators and his writers and all this stuff like that. So from that point on, Disney decided that he was going to make sure that he owned everything that he ever wrote about. So what I'm trying to get at is the whole Disney machine is, I mean, it could be going and got a little lost there, honestly. Yeah.
What's in that drink?
Nothing.
Is that just Crush? Orange Crush?
Yeah, just Orange
Well, okay,
Crush.
so I see what you're trying to get at.
No.
Okay, I don't. Why?
No.
I'm going to try to see if I know what you're getting.
Okay. Back on track, actually. So, they're going around, and they're trying to get all of the competition, right? Mm-hmm. But
Like I think any company should.
Yeah. And I mean, that's... Maybe that juggernaut idea is a good idea. But we still need to have some other big competition in there themselves. They can't have a total monopoly over the entire market.
Okay, but and I'll let you go first, Braden, because I kind of dominated time. But you can go ahead, and then I'll make whatever comment I had after.
Okay, so like I agree, and I think that there always will be competition. There always will be people who want to be better than Disney and stuff like that. So I don't think that it's very likely that Disney will ever have a moment of time where it doesn't have any competition. But I think that there could be a time when Disney would have competition, but that just straight up did not have the capital backing it to beat out Disney in any of the films that it makes.
I argue that flashiness does not always equal quality, and people are willing to pay for quality more than flashiness, as has been proven by blockbuster films tanking.
Okay, I agree with that. And there are indie films that do great. One of my favorite movies ever, Safety Not Guaranteed, has Aubrey Plaza. It's a movie about time travel. It's not particularly good, you know? Like that.
It's your favorite movie?
But it's my favorite movie. Because, so the acting is all right. It's not anything special. Nothing that you would say, oh my God, look at Aubrey Plaza. She's the greatest actress of all time. Like, no one would ever say that. Sorry. But like the storytelling behind it was like the part that made me want to watch and rewatch the movie. So I do agree that flashiness does not mean anything. Like Safety Not Guaranteed, I guarantee. I safely guarantee that they had way less money to make that movie than Walt Disney would ever want to even deal with. Like that's an hour on a Sunday afternoon to him. You know, the entire budget of that movie. So, sorry, I'm getting caught up in my words. Flashiness does not make for a good movie. Like, there needs to be good content behind it. There needs to be good writing, good cinematography. There needs to be something that is outstanding about a movie to make it a great movie. But if you don't have the money to tell people about it, the likelihood of that movie being overshadowed by this big movie with a monster budget is, it's going to be more likely.
But perhaps. I think we've killed that conversation dead. But what I'd like to bring up is the fact that we keep saying the Disney machine is freaking... Anyway, we said the Disney machine has so much...
It's freaking what?
Nothing, sorry.
We can't just let that go by.
You all looked at me like you wanted to keep saying something and I was going to keep going and you were like... We're not done, but I guess we're okay. Anyway, I said, whatever. We keep saying Disney is this killer, this giant entity that's just murdering everybody, but you look at, their TV listings, their Disney Channel is listed as, 20th. ESPN is their highest owned channel. Oh, wait, no, they own ABC.
They're own ESPN,
they're in fourth. They're in fourth and sixth. That's the highest they're at. CBS, NBC, and HBO Premium. Get this premium channel is still beating out Disney.
Can we get another premium, please?
Premium channel is beating out Disney. And so I just want to point out the fact that even though they have all this money, all these entities backing them, they are still losing, meaning the competition has stepped up. They've said, hey, in areas of TV, we own you. Nickelodeon beats out Disney Channel. Nickelodeon beats out Disney Channel, meaning they're putting out better content to kids than Disney is apparently.
Amani.
Mm-hmm.
How many ants do you think you've stepped on?
All of them.
You've stepped on a fuck ton of ants. That's because you're too fucking big and you don't notice that you're running them over.
That's 2 bleeps now.
already.
No, okay, but what I wanted to make a comment to Braden. I know Amani said this
I wanna
conversation
hear
was
this.
dead. No, his point was clear. What he was saying is Disney has destroyed a lot of small companies that we don't even know about because they are so small that no one would ever.
Yeah, they
Yeah, but
didn't.
who cares?
They're
They
not.
obviously weren't
They're
big
not
enough.
always intentionally like taking their business. Okay.
But it doesn't matter. Like, my question is, does it matter? Do you care about this small group that was trying to make a film that clearly didn't live up to enough standards to be the Disney film that apparently they don't put enough effort into?
Okay,
Nobody cares about that.
But I want to add this to what Amani just said because I think this is like the crux of my argument. Do you think a small company that's business would be taken away by Disney? Do you think when they make their one film, and let's say that it's a company that has enough money to make their first film. Let's say it's a company, well, maybe not a company. Let's say it's a group of people that made the film called Safety Not Guaranteed. Okay, which I'm not convinced is a great movie. I'll have to go watch it now because, I mean, you only had bad things to say about it, not good acting. But I do, I mean, I love Audrey Plaza. So I'd be interested in watching the movie. Do you think that the decision around the success of the movie should be to the public that watches the movie, or do you think it should be to a government entity that wants to stop Disney's progress in creating a monopoly and push other films that other companies make onto people? Because I think the decision of whether this film did well should be to the people that watch the film and to be to the marketing agency that, you know, helped the film get known and things like that. And also something I wanted to add that, you know, people don't talk about often is, where do you think successful movie ideas end up? Do you think they end up in indies primarily, or do you think they end up going up the chain of Disney and then Disney saying, we're going to make that film for you. We want to help you out. Do you think, I mean, where do you think the ideas for Disney films come from? Do you think it's primarily in their idea center? Do you think ideas from the outside come in? And I mean, I don't know the statistics. I mean, Disney wouldn't release anything saying, oh, by the way, all of our movies come from other people. Because I don't think that'd be a great marketing move for Disney. But I think there would be a substantial amount of people that went to Disney themselves, or let's say NBC, or another corporation that had the capital to help them out. And if the idea was good enough, that's where the start would happen. And also, some of the films that we've talked about are not necessarily that we've talked about, but some of the directors that we've talked about that have made very, very successful films came from an indie start that didn't have great big budgets and things like that. But they had, and then they didn't have big names acting in them either. But they had, you know, very, very, very good plot lines and very well played out directing and things like that. And that's what, and I think the primary decision of whether they are successful should come to the public that gets to watch it.
I agree that, like, it's that kind of thing. Beauty is in the beauty is in the eye of the beholder.
There we go.
Right?
It was said very slowly,
yeah.
but I mean, you got that.
But I got the message across.
Yeah, go.
Okay. So I do agree that, like, the success of a movie doesn't always mean, or isn't always dependent on the budget that it has.
Right.
But I think that there are movies that could have been really good had they had more money. And I think that they could have competed better with Disney if they had more money. And even some of those groups of people have broken apart, died out.
Right. And I mean, what you're talking about is a good point, but I don't think that's necessarily the fault of Disney. I don't think the fact that Disney is putting out movies that people are interested in seeing, even if, you know, they have the name to shove it out everywhere. And I mean, we can talk about examples of movies that were not very good, but very, very well marketed. So, I mean, lots of money was spent on the marketing, and the film ended up being, you know, 6 out of 10 on IMDb, kind of a thing. And those films still made a lot of money because, I mean, people still wanted to go see it because it was marketed well and things like that. And something I think we should talk about in the future on the podcast is sometimes their trailers were very well made. And then people were interested in that. So sometimes the marketing team did a good job for the movie to push it out to people. But in the case that you're talking about, let's say a small indie group made a movie that was very, very, very good and comparable in quality to some of the best movies that have ever been produced by Disney. Let's say that were the case. Now, my first point would be, if their idea was independently developed, so they wanted to do it as an indie, they are taking a risk on their own to produce a movie that's going to make them more in their box office purchases by the public than their budget was in making it. I mean, that's a risk they take. Just like, entrepreneurs do when they start businesses. I mean, it's a risk to say, are we going to make enough money off of this film to balance out what we had to pay in our budget to pay for the director and for producing and marketing and things like that. Now, the second scenario is that group that had the idea could have gone to a bigger organization that could have provided more capital for them. Now, would their name be attached to the movie, and would they get exactly what they wanted out of the movie? Probably not, but the risk is a lot, less great. So, no matter how many movies are out there, and let's say it's 1 million movies that are better than every Marvel movie that's ever come out, and I think there are some very, very well-made Marvel movies. There are some Marvel movies that I love a lot. Let's say there are movies, 1 million out there that are better than every Marvel movie, and I didn't get the chance to see it because some other movie from Disney was marketed more, and there were more trailers, and there's more ability in capital to get whatever that movie was to me. I don't think that's the fault of Disney. I think that's the fault, and not necessarily the fault even. I think that's the choice that the indie company made, and the choice that the indie company made, and possibly the people that are acting in the movie that might not be part of the indie company or part of the indie group, to make their movie marketable in the way they want it marketable. So if they only had the money to do so much with it, and maybe there were people that were like, that idea is not good, we're not going to give you money, and they didn't get the opportunity to go to a bigger place. Regardless, either way, that's sometimes the risk you have to take when you make a movie with low capital amounts. And now there are movies out there also that cost a lot of money to make and to market properly, and they don't spend that much, but they still produce a movie good enough to make all of the money back and more. So there are movies that did not cost very much money at all to make, yet they brought in lots of income, and they became very, very, very popular because they were that good. And that's why I'm saying I don't think it's the case where there are millions of movies out there that we would love to see all the time, because otherwise they would have gotten to us. I think the free market creates a very, very fair environment for the movies of the highest quality to get to the public, regardless of marketing capital.
For example, let's bring out Exhibit 1, or is it A? It's Exhibit A.
Oh my
Napoleon Dynamite. You know how much money went into making that movie?
Probably not very much.
$400,000.
Okay.
For comparison, The Room, the one with Tommy Wiseau,
I just looked up The Room.
$6 million.
$6 million.
$6 million went into that movie. Napoleon Dynamite, $400,000, and yet everybody knows that movie. Everybody knows that Lisa doesn't have to drink.
Give me some of your
She doesn't have to drink 2% milk. She can drink whole if she wanted to, because she's not fat.
So give us an example of the box office on
$46.1 million.
Do you know what The Room's
from Napoleon Dynamite?
Napoleon Dynamite had a return of $46.1 million.
Obviously, over how long?
Oh, I'm sure
well.
I don't know if it's talking about box office revenue. We're talking about how much people paid at the
box office
at the
revenue.
Cinema, correct? Or am I incorrect? Or is that just any purchase of the movie?
I'm pretty sure that's how it works.
Because if it's any purchase of the movie, I'm sure it's gotten greater than 46.
It's probably more than that.
So, and let's compare it to The Room. The Room cost $6 million to make,
Mm-hmm.
and its box office. I'm not kidding. This is whatever Wikipedia says. The box office was $1,800.
What?
Now, I alone could break, and I'm sure at this point it's a lot higher. Because
I
now
could get all my friends and we'd make that much
Now,
money off of watching my movie.
Because, he could have just gone to someone and said, he could be on the street for a year and make maybe that much money. I'm sure people that just sit on the street make close to that much money. So if we compare it, if you talk about The Disaster Artist, the idea... And I do think The Disaster Artist was a well-made film.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't seen the entire thing. I've only seen clips and things like that. It did much better at the box office because, it was probably marketed better and things like that. And also, no offense to the creation of The Room, and I know it's been seen as a comedy sense, The Room was terrible. The Room is awful.
Oh, yes.
Okay, and that's part of why it's funny, and that's part of the cringe factor that I think the majority of people watch The Room for, is it's awful. It's actually terrible. And so, and The Disaster Artist, though, it was marketed a lot more, I think the release of that has made The Room much more interesting. But prior to The Disaster Artist, and prior to people on the internet digging as deep as they could into bad movies, I don't think The Room had enough quality to ever make it out of the hole that it was in. And now I think the only reason we're talking about it is because we know about it. And I think that's because the Disaster Artist put a bigger spotlight on it than it's ever had before. And I'm sure that the box office now for the Room is much higher, or at least the purchase of Film Sense is much higher. But I think that's something we should consider is if a movie is that bad, and it still had the marketing that other movies doesn't have, and it's able to be so unsuccessful that people didn't even know about it, except for the fact that it was terrible, then I think that completely reassures the point that the free market decides exactly what it thinks is good and bad. Because, it's the decision of the people that watch the films that should decide if it's good or bad.
Since we're on the topic of bad films being made, the Disney machine, let's talk about Star Wars Episode 8. Why not?
Okay.
Because, we're talking about a movie that people say is so bad, and yet this let's get this right. This budget, $200 million. $200 million. You want to know how much it made back in the box office?
1.2. That's my guess.
$1.265 billion.
Dang, that was
very accurate
Very
guess.
accurate, so I'd like to applaud that. That's actually a really, really good guess. But secondly, I'd also like to say that that's $1.265 billion saying, we don't care how bad this movie was, we still watched it. So my question is, if this movie, and I'll say I watched this movie twice, I did.
I did as well.
That's for other reasons. I was offered it in 3D, and let me just say the visuals in that movie, spectacular. I'll admit, spectacular visuals.
You have a $200 million budget, and some of the greatest.
It's good. It delivers on some parts. So can you really argue that this movie didn't deserve what it got? People say the story was trash. People say Space Leia. We're not a fan. She's not our president. Leia. But
not
the visuals on that film were done so well that I was willing to go see it again in 3D.
Spoilers ahead, but that scene with Snoke's ship getting sliced in half with the other ship going into light speed. That scene
that's going to go into history. That's going to go into film history.
Seriously, that was our generation's version of back in the day, that the Death Star exploding. That scene was so monumental to our parents essentially. Yeah. And that scene with Snoke's ship, that was our generation's
I dare to say something further. I think that's our generation's version of Luke, I am your father. Because, in a way, Luke, I am your father, that was groundbreaking storytelling. That was just like, they flipped the script. They flipped the script on it. And this was just flip the idea, Everyone's seen Star Wars. Everyone's known about Lightspeed jumping into Lightspeed for the longest time. But had you ever thought of running a ship at the last minute through another ship using Lightspeed? I hadn't thought of it until I saw her turning the ship around and her going to Lightspeed. I was like, oh, I know what she's doing. And I'd never thought of it until that point.
All right, so this brings it back to, does flashiness make a good movie? Obviously not. So you're saying visuals, fucking spectacular. Mm-hmm. I will agree with that wholeheartedly.
Right.
That was a beautiful film. Everything just looked amazing.
My jaw dropped for a solid 5 minutes after watching that.
Yeah, and I don't remember what the planet's name is, but the one that's covered in salt.
The red dust that was flying up, that was beautiful.
Yeah, that's the contrast in that shot alone is enough to just it brings you chills. I still like you said with the Snoke ship getting split in half. That scene, just thinking about it now, gives me chills.
Oh, yes.
Mm-hmm. But
I think so too.
I don't think that it really makes up for some of the ways that it lacks.
It made up for about 5 minutes.
There are some...
Tell me all the ways
there are some major holes. Okay. Mm-hmm. So... purple hair girl, whatever her name is.
Rose?
No. That's the Asian girl.
The Admiral chick.
Yeah, Admiral Holdo, right?
She wasn't
We're not even to the scene with the Asian chick driving into Finn's
this is not. This comes later.
Laura Dern's character.
Yeah.
I don't know. They don't have a name for her on here. That's how insignificant she is. She's as
Why
insignificant.
did I say Admiral Holdo? That's the ginger dude, isn't it?
She's as insignificant as Benicio del Toro's character. They didn't put names for either of them. Apparently, that's how insignificant both of them are.
Okay,
that's kind of cool.
But anyway, I think the whole that's represented in the plot by what she does is great. Why isn't she open to telling the plan the pilot that we follow, and I'm not going to remember his name either since you weren't able to.
Poe Dameron.
Poe Dameron, right? Okay.
Yeah, nice try.
Yeah. Way to go.
No, it is Admiral Holdo. That is.
Oh, okay.
That's your name?
Well
it
done.
is Admiral
Oh,
Holdo.
nice. Well done. I mean, you knew it the whole time.
Yeah,
Anyway,
I did.
Yeah, I mean, her inability to explain what I think is the simplest plan
Yeah.
that the universe has ever come up with. Hey, we're gonna escape out the back. Wow, brilliant! Like, way to go. That takes some real genius, captains of ships. But the fact that she can't just say those words, and
Yeah.
instead the audience is like, this girl's against us.
I think we can take this back to the whole Disney and their family values and not wanting to get really gritty with anything. Because I've said this before, going into that Star Wars movie, I was really expecting a really dark, gritty film, especially with that the red text in the title and everything. I was expecting some dark themes to come out of that. What do we get out of it? Those stupid fucking
Porgs.
The Porgs.
The Porgs.
Oh,
Porgs.
no. The Porgs were good. The
Porgs
Porgs
played a
were
great role.
good. Don't you insult those. They used them right. They used them enough, and they did not overuse them. And so I say, good job with the Porgs.
I misspelled porgs.
Porgs for president. That's what I say.
Okay,
No, okay.
you and American government ideas. Right.
Okay, but going back, I think Disney really can set the gold standard for a lot of films. But when it comes to these dark, gritty films, like what Star Wars should have been, it cannot do that.
You see, and that's the thing. I feel like that's the thing. Everyone just has too many expectations for Star Wars. And so what could Disney do? What could they do? I have a friend who is like, I'm only in it for the space wizard battles. I want to see lightsaber
wizard.
action. I don't care about the politics. I don't care about the fighting between the rebels and the Empire. I want to see lightsabers going on. Other people are like, the Force is dope. I want to expand that story arc. I want to see it, which I will admit they did a poor job. That whole Rey going into the cave. I mean, I'm glad they made Rey's parents nothing to negate the midichlorians thing. But I'm kind of upset with what they did with the dark side of the Force in that movie. It's pretty weak.
Yeah.
Anyway, what could they do? They were trapped. They have so much expectation. So much hype has been built up. As you can see from the box office generating $1.625 billion. That is a 20th of our economy.
Geez.
A 20th. A 20th. That's like... It's not...
That's absolutely... Wait.
We're a $20 trillion economy. I got the number.
We're at
Okay. I was going to say, that's
billion and
absolutely
trillion.
insane.
My
if they
bad,
were
my
to
bad. I got
generate
my
that
billions.
much revenue.
We're going to edit that part out.
No, we're keeping that in.
Thank God.
Okay, so
But I got to finish this real quick. I got 2 seconds left on it.
Those are 2 seconds.
Anyway, regardless of that, what I think...
Gave us unrealistic expectations within that
And we
first
set
scene.
unrealistic expectations. This is
Yeah.
Star Wars, bro. We're
Yeah.
expecting something revolutionary. Like George Lucas invented way back when we made A New Hope. And so giving it away to Disney possibly was the best move. Because now Disney can be like, we know what people want. Because we've proven to the people that we can create movies. We can create entertainment. We can make Disney World the place people want to go to. Who goes to theme parks anymore? Who does?
Nobody.
Old people. Old people.
Who's on
People who
Facebook.
have money. And who has money? Not college students, but college students are still going to Disney World, apparently. People are still going to Disney World. People are still paying Disney to do this stuff. So obviously, they have something right in either their marketing or either their entertainment that is making it worthwhile to go to. So why not give it to Disney? Why not Disney take a shot? And yes, they failed. But guess what that means? It's a whole opening for people to take that sci-fi direction and be like, I can do it better. And then they have to do it better. That's the thing about this. Everyone's thinking that the Disney machine is there to just dominate, but it's not there to dominate. It's there to set a precedent. It's there to be like, hey, this is what we can aspire to be better. So people actually have to do it. People have to be better. We got to get those Quentin Tarantinos, Martin Scorsese's, what's his name? Christopher Nolan, there it is.
Stanley Kubrick.
We got to get those people to get up and do stuff now. They can't just sit around and be like, I can do better, and then not. They actually have to do it.
Okay. Do you want to go around to final thoughts on Disney Machine? See if you have any revelations throughout the thing.
All right.
Lance, you can go ahead and start.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I mean, I think that for some select genres, that the Disney machine is a good thing. It really does set the gold standard for a lot of films, but only only in a specific genre. It does not cross over into the gritty, dark world of film. And, I mean, there you have to have a lot of competition. That's my thoughts on the Disney machine. It can be used for some good, but only to a certain extent.
In my opinion, I think that I've been swayed a little bit more towards your side of the camp. It's basic economics with competition and shit like that. It makes people want to do better so that more people will want their stuff. So, I do think that it's a good thing to have, the giant that somebody wants to topple. But, like Lance said, I think that there are some situations where Disney either isn't really the right person for the job, or Disney isn't willing to step out of their comfort zone to reach a corner of the market that is needing a revamp.
Yep, I agree, and I see what you're saying there. I think that it's in the public's best interest. I think it's in the interest of corporations around the world to allow Disney to acquire whatever they can and to create a higher standard. So I think that, and this isn't something that we brought up at all, but I think that some people want to do this with huge companies. I don't think government intervention and forcing them to stay in any sort of realm is good for anyone. Because I think they're shaking up things, and I think they're putting up a gold standard for some things. What I would want to see out of Disney, and this is something you guys both brought up, I would want to see them get into darker themed movies, and they don't have to attach their name and their stupid castle animation to anything. I don't think they have to attach it to anything. I think they can purchase a company or acquire any sort of organization, or even have a group come on by choice that has a good idea and give them the funding they need to create their film. I don't think they have to attach anything to the movie they make, but I want them to, go at it with the same standard they hold all of their other films to. And I think we could start seeing huge competitions in movies. And that's always in the public's best interest. I think that we'd get the best quality film out of that sort of instance.
See, I have to say honestly that I think that for the sake of not creating a monopoly that everyone's afraid of, we need to let Disney not move in on the remaining genres that haven't been touched yet. The bloody genres, the sex-filled genres, the horror genres, because then everyone has the formula for what a good movie needs to be, with what's happened. And then we get the movies like Deadpool. Those crazy movies that threw everything at the wall, all that vulgar stuff, and it worked. So I feel like for the sake of competition, Disney set a formula. Everyone else just needs to realize what that formula is and then work with it.
I'm Jared Keenan. I have no idea how to end this podcast.